Usually when we're jump scared, the least of our problems is whether or not our response was cortisol or norepinephrine based. But in today's episode, we're going to be teaching you not only the brain's reaction to jump scares, but also how to pronounce norepinephrine. Hello everybody, and welcome to another Talk by Tessa. If you don't already know, Talks by Tessa's are videos written by Tessa, but filmed by me. Today we're talking about the neuroscience of a jump scare, so strap yourself in and get ready for a lot of scientific jargon to be thrown your way. With that, let's get back to the video. A lot of our fear response is controlled by one group of receptors, called the 5-hydroxytryptamine receptor, serotonin receptor, or the 5-HT receptor. They mainly moderate two responses, both excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmission. The 5-HT receptors are a group of ligand-gated ion channels and G-protein-coupled receptors that are found primarily in the central and peripheral nervous systems. The neurotransmitter serotonin activates the 5-HT receptor and acts as their natural ligand, which is a substance that forms a complex with the biomolecule in order to serve a biological purpose. 5-HT receptors modulate a plethora of different neurotransmitters, such as gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA for short, glutamate, norepinephrine, or nor-E if you don't want to say that mouthful of letters, and serotonin. It also controls the release of cortisol, as well as many other hormones. These neurotransmitters and hormones regulate the biological and neurological process of anxiety, which is the main feeling that we feel when we are jump scared. When we get jump scared, the brain will send a signal to the 5-HT receptors. The receptors will then either release another chemical and relay the signal to other transmitters, or it will release a hormone or chemical response based on that signal. Typically, the fear response will release cortisol, norepinephrine, or glutamate, causing the subject to become startled or anxious. It can also cause an increase in activity to the 5-HT2 receptor, which will cause a drop in serotonin and therefore make us anxious. For GABA, benzodiazepine won't bind to the GABA-A receptor, which will decrease GABA activity and, once again, make you feel anxious. All of these signals are chemical releases and neurotransmissions that cause the anxiety that we feel when we're jump scared. In order to get a chemical response, certain parts of our brain need to send signals. The main parts of the brain used in a fear response are the thalamus, hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus, and the sensory cortex. The thalamus is the part of the brain that decides where to send the data, to your eyes, ears, mouth, or skin. The hippocampus stores and retrieves conscious memories and possesses sets of stimuli to establish context using those memories. The amygdala decodes emotions and determines possible threats, but it stores fear memories so we know what to avoid. The hypothalamus activates our fight-or-flight response based on the situation. The sensory cortex interprets the sensory data of the situation. All of these parts of the brain make a chain reaction to cause a full fear response. Let's say you hear a loud thud from the kitchen. As soon as you hear the noise, your brain will send sensory data to the thalamus. The thalamus doesn't immediately know whether or not it's a threat, but it might be, so it sends data to the amygdala. The amygdala then receives the neural impulses and takes action to protect you, and it does so by telling the hypothalamus to initiate the fight or flight response. There is another route your brain will take, but in terms of jump scares, it's usually a very quick form of the route I just described. All of this is activated by a scary situation. But what makes something a scary situation? The main way that we're affected by jump scares is through being startled. But how does a game maker accomplish this? Well, think about all the jump scares you've experienced. Typically, the game will ease you into a neutral feeling situation and then startle you so the effect is heightened. The other way they'll do it is add some dissonant chords and then, once again, startle you so you feel extra anxious. Now, there's another looming question in this process. How does one craft a jump scare? Well, usually it's made by using a plethora of noises, usually high-pitched ones, to evoke a primal fear that makes us feel anxious. This fear is based on the high-pitched noises, as when we hear a high-pitched noise, we associate it with a baby crying, which makes us feel tense. These noises can be anywhere from screams to static. Just as long as it's high-pitched and loud, it gets the point through. So, how does all of this work together? Well, let's start with the stimuli. The stimuli is the jump scare itself. which we now know will likely be a high-pitched and loud noise accompanied by a scary image. The thalamus will rapidly send information to the amygdala, which will make your hypothalamus initiate your fight or flight response, which will be characterized by a signal sent to the 5-HT receptors, which then, based on your personal response, will release nervous chemicals such as cortisol or norepinephrine. All of this happens in an instant, almost like the blink of an eye. Our brain somehow makes this chain reaction in the amount of time that is barely fathomable by humans. The human brain can go through a complicated series of chemical and neurological reactions so quickly that we recognize it as an instant. So don't take your brain for granted, and even think about how much it's working just to make sure you're terrified by that jump scare. And with that, remember, we didn't start the fire, we just keep it burning. Thanks for watching. It's crazy that the human brain can do all of this in seconds. And yet, when someone asks a question, I have to have them repeat the question 3 times, and then halfway through the 4th repetition, I finally answer them. However, stimulating the brain with simple tasks that are still engaging can help raise focus and absorption of knowledge, which is why we highly recommend clicking the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.